Excellent. Thank you. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the last day of Digital Leaders Week. At least this is a morning slot and not the other project I'm working on, which has got an afternoon slot. So everybody will be even more dead for that. Thank you for coming. We're going to be talking about designing services bigger than you are. So working with people outside of your organization and other organizations to try and create a strategy and then services that help deliver that strategy. And this is sort of lessons we've learned at Hunts through this. So a few introductions, if I can get to work. Who am I and where is Huntingdonshire? Because not everybody knows about it. So I am the Assistant Director for Transformation in Huntingdonshire District Council. I support a lot of the other stakeholders in the council delivering on their objectives. And I'm sort of the interface point between our council and our shared IT service. And so I do a lot of stuff around introducing new technology. Where and what is Huntingdonshire? We're a large district within Cambridgeshire. We've got 4 market towns and we're sort of sat between Peterborough and Cambridge. And most importantly, for a lot of this conversation, we're a district authority, and Cambridgeshire is a 2-tier system. So we don't do social care, and we don't sort of have a giant remit, but we do have a quite close relationship with all of our residents. And then a bit more about the geography. We've got quite a large range of economic prospects and an aging population. So we have some really deprived sort of inner town boroughs, and then also some like leafy rural villages that are all very nice and pretty quaint. So it's quite a mixed bag. So what am I going to talk to you about today? I'm going to do a bit of scene setting as to how we got here, what we're doing, then talk about the SENA project, the ideas that led up to that and what the project is. I might even explain that acronym if you're lucky, but for now we'll keep on going. And then most importantly, and what most of the talk is going to be about, is the lessons we've learned in doing this work, hopefully trying to sort of communicate some of those out so people can learn from what we've done, even if they're doing something completely different. What I would like to do is thank a load of our partners and collaborators. So PlaceCube, Barnsley Metropolitan Borough Council, Unboxed, Savvy, which is the something for scalable interoperability. It's really catchy. Paul will, I'm sure, put it in chat what this is to open that up. Open Referral UK, which we're using. And then, of course, the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Local Digital Fund and the COVID sort of response initiatives that came out of that. That's what gave a lot of the funding that we're using to do some of this work. If you have any questions, sort of put them in chat and I'll either try and take them later if I've got a slide on this later, or we'll take it as a Q&A at the end, or I'll try and sort of like catch them as I go. Feel free to be a bit interactive around this. I've no idea how long this is going to take. So if I suddenly get faster, it's because I'm running out of time and have a lot of slides. If I suddenly get slower, it's because I'm padding to fill time. So questions help me in that instance. So let's talk a bit about what the project is and a bit of history. So this is what normal looked like. Pre-COVID, everything was ticking along apart from economic financial crashes, but let's not talk about those. So we have our residents. We're a district. We do largely transactional services. So we deal with bins, council tax, licensing, environmental health, planning applications. Very much the citizen knows what they want and they come to us asking us to do a thing. We also have an element of crisis support. So homelessness, the statutory duty to house somebody actually falls on a district council. So those that everything has failed end up on our doorstep going, help us. And then we have a much more in-depth and prolonged relationship with these sort of people. This is what I've termed sort of crisis support. The other more traditional support services, social care, education, etc., that's county council. And we've sort of used to be quite separate from each other in this regards, and we'd talk and there'd be sort of attempts to collaborate, but they never really got all that far, if I'm completely honest. Then COVID happened, which was bad for absolutely everybody. And we had to start working to get much closer, much a much bigger collective to try and handle the impact of COVID on society, on our residents. And so we created a sort of a more outbound, more joined up, holistic sort of approach to this. So County Council gave us data that we'd never had before, that we allowed us to assess people's risks, and that included the CEV list, as we handled sort of providing care for the CEV cohort during the second lockdown. We then created an outbound calling mechanic. So we tried to talk to people and go, what's wrong? Are you okay? But we tried to hand off delivery to community groups. So our trusted partners in the area who would actually be the last mile and deliver support to our residents when they needed it. And the reason that worked is by calling the residents and saying, are you okay? We bought ourselves time. So it wasn't an imminent like crisis, I need food today. It was like, I'm going to need a bit of food sort of like 3 days down the line, which means we could have we could hand over to community groups with a very large expectation that they could deliver in time, because it wasn't an absolute turnaround of right now. And that's sort of what happened in COVID, and that sort of created the big idea for what we wanted to try and do in the SENA project. The idea that led to the SENA project, which is taking a load of the traditional things, like let's make an app for something, because everything needs an app nowadays. Let's make search better, because finding support services is pretty appalling, to be blunt. And then let's make it integrated and let's bring all the parties together. So the idea was we'd get data from county, we'd continue to get data, but we'd get it slightly abstracted, and we'd get it about what we were calling life events. So big change of circumstances, somebody's sort of left school, left education, entered into care, these sorts of things. And then we would aggregate that data up, feed it into the app. Citizens could self-serve, so we'd hope that they'd be interested in sort of engaging early and sort of helping them understand sort of some of their root causes and the services that could be offered to help them out of their sort of not necessarily crisis, but when things weren't looking so good. And this would all engage with our community team, who would then engage our community groups, and would get some outcome tracking back. So we could work out what works, work out what doesn't work, help tune the algorithm in the rules engine, and just try and make this a sort of a loop that kept on working together. So at one point or another, I sort of christened this the Airbnb model of support. So one-stop shop, you tell it what you want, it tells you some things. You don't even need to know where you're going, so that what help you need, it will tell you stuff that might be good. That was the idea. And so we approached MHCLG and said, would you fund this? And they did. And we did a discovery stage on this sort of previously in the November, October time. And then we've moved into a design stage that's sort of been working through since April, May, and now June. And we're going to talk about the lessons we've learned in this design stage. So this is the SENA project. And SENA in this case stands for the Societal Early Needs App. So it was a riff off of public health management, is sort of like societal need management as an approach. And the current project is to turn our design, sort of that was on paper, looked good, into something we could guesstimate an ROI for. And we needed to code. We had a number of co-design challenges with our partners that we were looking to address in this project, which is what has led to us learning these lessons. So we need a useful list of services. And this had needed a lot more metadata than any other list of services that was out there. And so we needed to talk to our partners about who was going to maintain this and what they were going to do. We needed an integrated referral process that's not just a fire and forget email, so we could get some co-design, so we can get some outcome tracking. We could remove stages of sort of asking the same question twice. And these were both things where we needed to work with the app our community team, our partners, and come up with a solution that worked for everybody. And we thought this was pretty challenging, but we were going to give it a good shot. It turns out that the community organizations actually wanted a tool that they could use themselves because all they had was pen and paper, and that wasn't necessarily working the best, and they realized they needed something. That was not what I was expecting when I came into this project. I thought I had some nice little challenges to deal with, and then all of a sudden I needed to sort of solve these much bigger problems. So this is sort of the scope. This is what we were trying to do. This is what we've been doing over the last few months. We have a website you can go and visit and see some of our progress and some of our sprint notes and our show and tells. But what I'm now going to sort of focus on for the remaining 15 minutes, because nobody's asking any questions, is some of the lessons we've learned from this process. So hopefully you can take away, make them agnostic to the project you're doing, and engage with community groups. So what have we learned about in this process of like building services together, trying to agree a strategy? So rather than us arbitrarily going, we will do this, and we need the community groups to go, yes, that's actually a good idea and we can support these. There's a lot about influence and shaping and a lot about breaking down silos. So our key lessons so far are language is incredibly important. You've got to get this alignment of goals and purpose, and everybody has to be willing to shift a bit to achieve that. And a lot of thinking about how organizational structure, your sort of who reports to who, how you make decisions, do you like committees or not, how that affects your how you engage and how you co-design. Now, yes, none of these lessons are new. If you read almost any book on successful project delivery, successful co-design, these probably appear on the first few pages. So if you are looking for incredible new insights, probably not the place to come, but I'm going to talk a bit more about how these points have been hammered home and what we've learned from them. So I was at Service Design in Government in 2019, way back when we could actually get together. And Carrie Bishop, who's the sort of head of transformation and design for the city and office of San Francisco, came and gave a presentation, and she said, no one cares about your double diamond. Incredibly true. I would add also, nobody cares about your double diamond, your agile terminology, your technobabble, or your subject-specific terms. Because when you're crossing organizational boundaries and silos and sort of groups of different actors, you've got to go back to a pretty basic language that everybody can engage with. And I know GDS and service design manuals talk a lot about ensuring your use of language when you're dealing with customers. So when you put a form together, when you're engaging with customers, you should use terms that they understand, that they acknowledge. You've also got to do the same with your co-design partners. There is no point in going to a charity and talking about we're creating a service blueprint for our platform. They're just going to look at you blankly. So you've really got to sort of pick your language well. Note that I just haven't there. And that sort of led to, that's sort of the key learning. And to sort of make this home, like when I talk about double diamond methodology, TOGAF, or other sort of methodology, basically I think about 30% of my team get me, and I'm trying to improve that. But who doesn't? Like the rest of the council, like the planning service, customer services, our partners, the charities we're trying to work with, our community groups, they don't care. They don't care that we're in the design phase. They just want to know what's going on and when they're going to see something. When we talk about agile, sprint, whether it's Scrum or Kanban or what flavor of like agile we're using, or hybrid agile, I should say now, again, like a lot of my team get me, ICT get me, our suppliers get me. Our partners, again, really don't. Like telling them we're in sprint 2 and this is our sprint goal and we're tracking this on our Kanban board, you just get totally blank looks. And then system design technology, my particular favorite argument about what is and isn't the cloud. Yeah, nobody gets me at all. Basically, everybody just sort of glasses over. And when I try and talk about all of these things at once, I don't even understand myself, to be honest. And so you've just lost everybody. So the key lesson I would say here is bring everything down to the lowest common denominator when you're talking with people. All of this methodology, all of the Scrum, the TOGAF, it's all shorthand. So it works when you're talking in a community of practice that understands it. But as soon as you move out of that community practice, it's absolute nonsense. And it will just lead to people sort of disengaging. There are very, very few people who will stand up, have the bravery to stand up in a meeting and go, I have absolutely no idea what you've just said. You have to presume that that's true, though, especially when you move out into a much wider group of people you're engaging with. So the second set of lessons we were sort of learning was on goals and alignment. Got to get a good like late 80s, 90s film quote in every presentation. So Jerry Maguire says, show me the money. And it's about alignment between all of the actors in that group. Everybody wants the same thing. We want to help people. We're public sector workers. We all want to help people, or we're volunteers. We want to help people, but we all think that that should be done in slightly different ways with slightly different purposes, working in slightly different ways of working. Now, everybody knows that when you're running a project, what you do is you talk about your people, you set your goals, and you create a stakeholder engagement map. Just going to mute you, Mike, so I don't get background feedback. And that's great. That works really well, and we all know to do this. Now, the problem with that is as soon as you get into this multidisciplinary, multi-organizational model, you actually have everybody's stakeholders map, everybody's goals, and you've now made this an order of magnitude harder. And this is what it's about trying to then formulate and agree these goals. And this is where we've sort of struggled with some of the agile delivery model of time boxed and trying to move forward at pace. And I think our biggest lesson would be we would need to spend very low intensity but long time periods trying to make sure the strategy setting stage, make sure everybody agrees this is a goal. This is something they want to work towards, and they think this is the right method. And then when you're then in this sort of the sprint model, the fast-paced iterative delivery, you're not having arguments about why you're doing this. Why have we picked this way? I thought we were doing something else. You've had those up front, and they will take a long time to percolate up and down an organization such that you get the full buy-in, and then you can move to the delivery phase. The final thing is talking about is organizational structure, and how a structure is organized affects critically how it thinks, how it makes decisions, and how it views the world. And it doesn't really matter where those dots are on or what axis you choose, but I've sort of taken a people-centric versus process-centric and a siloed versus integrated model to try and work out where people are and what they look like, because that will affect how we can get decisions made. Councils are sort of pretty siloed entities and a bit process-centric, so we love a good board meeting. And our board meetings have sort of good or bad, and you can read what Tesla are doing and Elon Musk are doing about the whole, you read for the first 5 minutes of a meeting and that's what gets everybody up to speed, because realistically we're all trying to do tons of stuff, which means almost all meetings we get to, it's like, have you read the paper? No. Okay, so I'm now going to talk you through the paper, and understanding what that means and what that means for the speed at which you can make decision making, I think is very important for when you're trying to do these co-design sessions and working with partners. Some charities, it's like they can engage, they can love what you're saying, but the boss person makes all the choices, and if they're not in the room, you know that you're going to have to take everything, you're going to engage, we're going to get something, but then to get sign up, it's got to go up, you're going to have to brief them, and then it's going to have to come down. And in other places, in some councils, it's like there's this multitude of committees that need to sign off on things, and getting the top to go, yes, we have strategic buy-in to this. That's not the same as having operational delivery buy-in from all of the different peoples that are going on. There's an excellent podcast by a guy called Tim Harford called Cautionary Tales. Episode 6 speaks about disruption and whether or how organizational structures affects the uptake of ideas. So I'd highly recommend listening to those, and he tells them in a good way, probably better presentation than I've just given, to be fair. And that, I believe, hearing sort of like concludes what I was going to talk. There is one question in chat, which I'll get to in a second. So I'd like to say first, thank you for spending 25 minutes of your day listening to me stand on my soapbox. Thank you again to all of our partners. If you want more information, check out huntingdonshire-projects.org and then look at SENA Phase 2 for this, or some of the work we did with the LGA and VoiceBots, or some of the earlier work on SENA. Our next show and tell is on Thursday, the 24th of June, between 10 and 11. And if you want any more information, that's my email address, or Sarah Goodall's email address, who's our project delivery lead. So if anybody has any more questions, please start typing them now, and I will deal with the one that is in chat. Yeah, I think be interested to understand what you mean by the logical model there to facilitate the planning stage. I think there's a lot of hidden agendas we've seen, and there's a lot of people sort of that are willing to come so far, but no further. They'll engage. It's a great idea. I'll stop presenting in a second, so you can see me in a bigger picture. Why you'd want to, I'm not sure. And there's a lot of people that will come so far with the involvement with the project. They'll come to co-design sessions, they'll tell us what they think, but then when it comes around to going, okay, now we need you to do this, we need you to change how you're working, and then it's suddenly, oh, we didn't quite sign up to that. But I think, yeah, any tools that people could recommend would be excellent to sort of share how you might go about this, and sort of like prune through all the methods of stakeholder mapping. I'm pretty much out of content, so unless there are any more questions or comments that anybody wants to say, you've been a great audience, very silent. It's what we like to see. Sarah, do you have any sort of closing remarks you'd like to offer?
Well, thank you very much, Tony. I'm Sarah with the LDCU at MHCLG. We have recommended this talk as part of one of the 10 talks for your public sector badge. So yes, just to say thank you everyone for attending. I hope that was very useful for you. I think we're going to try and send slides out after the session. But otherwise, yeah, have a great rest of the conference and a great rest of the day.
Opened a can of worms on a much bigger problem of like, yeah, we want to understand how we can do better at referring each other. I don't think we've got prioritization down. I think there's still a lot of momentum and goodwill, and we're just trying to power through it more than anything else.
Thanks, Tony. That's a really interesting conversation and presentation. I think many of the councils are facing exactly what you're facing, if not have already done something, and then hoping to see the results. I guess just wanted to hear a little bit about how have you sort of, I know you're a conduit to ICT team and also the business teams, so how have you actually brought them together? Because that's also a bit of a challenge in many councils where different perspectives leads to specific sort of ways of doing things. I just wonder if you can share a little bit about that in regards to the SENA project.
So we've, I think it's interesting. So we're Partly we haven't fully. This is what the use of our partners have been. So we've tried to keep everybody in touch, but we've known that the priority issues and the capacity and the backlog of our sort of in-house ICT service, they're already pretty maxed. So we've tried to keep them along, but used externals to sort of bulk our capacity there. And the transition hasn't always been smooth, and the handoff hasn't always been smooth, but we're trying to get better at it. And a lot of this comes from sort of the learning around language, in that trying to get people that have never heard about service design and agile into the space involves talking to them about different things, about writing down what you do, thinking about how you do it, and when you use a computer and when you don't. That's a much better way of saying, rather than we want to create a service blueprint and do an as-is process map. So it just doesn't get traction. In our ICT service, I think this is where we're looking at how we've got enough capacity to keep the lights on and keep doing the normal stuff, and this extra stuff we're very much reaching out and trying to use external providers. And this is why one of the reasons we engaged PlaceCube was their licensing model isn't so restrictive of organizational boundaries as some other systems is. So we've done it with a view to the future of how we can get to this sort of like one app, multiple organizations all in the same place, that we haven't actually nailed that solution as yet.
Thank you.
I think that's the end of questions. So probably we're going to call it there, and I've now finished on time, thanks to your help. So thank you, everybody, and have a good day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.